Open my heart, breathe in my soul, pour out the love, joy is my goal. Open my heart, breathe in my soul, pour out my love, joy is my goal. Open my heart, breathe in my soul, pour out my love, joy is my goal. Open my heart, breathe in my soul, pour out my love, joy is my goal. Open my heart, breathe in my soul, pour out my love, joy is my goal. Open my heart, breathe in my soul, pour out my love, joy is my goal. Open my heart, breathe in my soul, pour out my love, joy is my goal.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome everyone at home safely and healthy, we hope. I just want to thank everyone for all the kind texts and emails and calls and goodies and food as Jack and I went through COVID for the last 2 weeks. So we're thrilled to be back today, and we hope that all of you stay safe. It's not fun, that's for sure, and I'm glad we're on this side of it. And even in the midst of all of it, we were able to find the gratitude, and the gratitude is that we weren't in the hospital like some folks. So all in all, we're on this side of it now, and I'm excited to be back today. So let's go to some quick announcements. Our book study starts today. It's the 4 agreements. I'll talk a little bit when we get started about what this book has meant to me, and I hope it does to you. Tuesday night, we'll have the Zoom class, and the class will be, the link for it was on eNews. It'll be there again. If you have any questions, either email the office or myself personally. I'll make sure that you get it. And those who were in the last Tuesday class, I will be sending out that link on Monday. So anyone who is welcome, and I'm looking forward to finding a way to use the new technology for all of us as we get together. A big thank you from the Unity of Harrisburg Board, and that's to all of you that continue to financially support us. As you know, the bills keep coming every week, and I just had an incredible, wonderful feeling this morning as I walked into the office, and there was checks that were put in through the mail slot. That's one way. The other way is to mail it, and of course you can go on either the website or eNews and donate online. Online. So thank you so much for continuing to do that as we work through these challenging times. We have made a decision because of what's going on in this very unnormal, untraditional holiday season, that we're going to postpone our Christmas Eve service with the 12 Powers, the Burning Bowl, and the Whitestone ceremonies. Those are traditions that we've done now for 3 years, and they are about you participating. So we decided what we're going to do is we're going to hold those back and wait until we can safely and smartly meet again. And that way we're going to, whatever date that is, we're going to make that our holiday to start the new year when we're back together. So we're going to pull all those back, but when we're all back together, there will be the first 3 things that we do. Next week, we'll go to chapter 3 on the book, and then again on the Zoom class following that. Kate.
There is love in and through us and them and me and you, like the wind through the trees, like the salt within the sea. There is love full of power, and it's growing hour by hour as we live here in God's amazing grace. There is joy in us all, every creature great and small, in the warmth of a smile, in the laughter of a child. There is joy in the light, like a beacon through the night, as we live here in God's amazing grace. There is peace in this world, every boy and girl, and we will find a way, and God's peace will rule the day, 'cause there's love full of power, and it's growing hour by hour as we live here in God's amazing grace. We are loved through and through, it's in everything we do. We are joy, and we found when we spread it all around. We have peace in our soul, we are beautiful and whole as we live here in God's amazing grace. We have peace in our soul, we are beautiful and whole as we live here in God's amazing grace. Here in God's amazing grace.
Thank you, Kate, so much. And we're going to now, we've changed things up around a little bit this morning because this is, you get to experience some of the brain fog that I had through this 2 weeks. Because I forgot to do part of what we're going to do, and then we'll come back and Kate will do the daily word. So we'll be flexible today. Our affirmation of truth: there is only one presence and one power in this spiritual center, in the universe, and in my life. God the good, omnipotent. Unity is the center of divine love, mighty to attract our good and to radiate that good to others. We lift our eyes and see unity. Our members, our community, and our world abundantly prospered and divinely blessed. And our vision: Unity of Harrisburg is a loving, inclusive spiritual community, celebrating together our awakening Christ consciousness and sharing our gifts of peace, love, harmony, and abundance in this world. And unity of the 5 principles. Number 1 this morning: there is only one presence and one power, active as the universe and as my life, God the good. And we'll now go to the daily word.
I choose positive words and experience positive results. The thoughts I think and the words I speak have tremendous power. They can influence my life in either positive or negative ways, for they affect the expectations I hold in my heart and the outcomes I experience in my life. Today, I choose to use positive words. I make a conscious effort to think positive thoughts and to act in positive ways. By doing so, I open my life and the lives of those I pray for to the ever-present abundance of God. If I'm anxious about a particular situation or event, I change my thoughts about it. I approach it with new eyes, spiritual eyes. By expressing my faith in God and holding positive thoughts, my expectations are elevated to a higher level, and the outcomes I envision are revealed in wonderful ways. And from Luke, the kingdom of God is within you. And so it is. Let's take these thoughts into the silence.
Let's pray. Almighty Spirit of God, even in this time when we are disconnected physically, we know that we are connected in your Spirit. In the Spirit of truth, in the Spirit of love and joy and peace. And it's in this moment that we say yes to that life, and we say yes to the love and the joy and the peace. And as we feel it flowing through our very being, connecting not only with all of ourselves, but within all of those that we interact with. And it's in that paradigm of oneness that we step into this space at this time and say yes to life. And so it is. Amen. So I have talked about this past August when I had the incredible surprise from the UWM Ethics Review Team. One of the first things that they suggested that I do is go back to this little book called The Four Agreements. And they said that their experience, they had found many ministers who have gone back to that, going through what I was going through, that they felt it would be very helpful in some guidance. And I said yes. I remember reading the book, studying it maybe 10, 12 years ago maybe. But in August of this past year, I really dug into this book. And I let it be my guide, my spiritual guide, through the time and the challenges and the turmoil and the chaos that I was feeling inside. And so I hope as we enter this December of 2020, you are going through your own chaos, your own turmoil. The country is, the world is. And I hope that you'll find in this very simple but deep book something that will help you as it helped me in August. And as we get into the next chapter next week was my lifeline through the process. So this is getting ready for that, but as the author says, this is probably the most important and most powerful of the chapters. So it comes from Toltec Wisdom, which, as you know, I always like to put in context of history and of human civilization. This wisdom is about 1,000+ years old. So when we look at it, it's, Jesus, the master teacher, came 2,000 years ago. We had, David and Abraham and Jacob, and we had what was happening in China and India. So everything kind of spiritually had its origins in China, India, Middle East. But 1,000 years ago in Mexico, this is where this wisdom came out. And I just find it so interesting is when we see the parallels. I use this phrase for me as the golden thread of truth to all human civilization. It's been my study of religions and of cultures. And I find it so amazing that these were so apart from each other. And at best that we know, no one talked to each other. So somehow this divine consciousness was developed 1,000 years ago in Mexico. I love that piece about it, and it's so amazing. So out of this city, and it can be said many different ways, it's obviously a Spanish word, but what's more important is that it means man becomes God. That's where the Toltec Wisdom are surrounded by these pyramids and this incredibly advanced civilization of the Mayas and the Aztecs. This is kind of the spiritual center for everything that they did. Man and woman becomes God. Where have we heard that before? We've heard it time and time and time again. I want to talk about that in a little bit later. Don Miguel Ruiz was studying to be a medical doctor. I found that interesting because it was the very same thing we found out about Dr. Emily Cady, the last study we did. But in there, he decided that it was much more important for him to go back to the elders' Toltec wisdom from a spiritual nature. So he became a spiritual leader, a Nagual, or a shaman, depending what words you want to use for it. But as a man who invested his life in studying these ancient 1,000-year-old teachings, and this was the first of many books that he wrote, and it's about the 4 agreements, and I think it's so interesting when we begin to see the parallels of so much else that we've studied. He says right up front, it's not a religion. I'm not trying to replace any other religion. It's a way of life. I honor all other teachings. And I think that's the same thing we've heard here time and time again. It's the way Unity approaches it. We're looking at the paradigm of oneness. How are we similar, not focusing on how we're different from each other or from religious beliefs. But this is what attracted me back in August. A way of life that leads to happiness, love, and joy. To me, that's the definition of heaven on earth. I think it's what we all really want. Maybe we're burdened by too much fear and worry, anxiety that we can't focus. But this little book really helps us focus back on bringing us back to a way. Where have we heard a way before? 2,000 years ago, again, Master Teacher Jesus called what he taught a way, the way, to the very same things that we're talking about here today. Everything in existence is manifested from God. Everything is God. I can remember back maybe 2 years ago, we were studying Eric Butterworth, and he said, well, God is allness. This is just another way of saying that. Everything is God. Dr. Emily Cady said, everything is God and the rest is a lie. And he kind of begins to go there when he says matter, the physical part that you and I see, touch, smell, feel with our senses, is nothing but a mirror of truth. We've heard that again, said many, many different ways. But I like this idea of a mirror. It's not the real deal. So when you're standing in front of a mirror and seeing the reflection, that's not you, but it looks like you. And that's what he's saying happens in the physical for us. And then when matter shows up, it's only a mirror of truth. It's only a mirror of spirit. Again, we're seeing these very same, different way to explain it, but the very same concepts that we've heard time and time again. These are direct quotes out of the first chapter. It is true, I am God, but you are also God. We are the same, you and I. We are images of light. We are God. Now, when I looked at this and read this back in August and again this week, I was taken back to King David in the Psalms when he said, "Ye are gods." And then probably 3,000 years later than that, when Jesus said the very same, "It is written in Psalms that you and I are gods." And here again, 1,000 years ago in Mexico, never talking to each other, this very same concept. And this concept leads me to my belief, and I hope that it's yours, is that we are truly spiritual beings having this physical experience. This is the same teaching showing up time and time and time again. And as we begin to understand that we have this completed divinity within us, this divine within us, it changes everything that we do. It changes how we see ourselves, and it changes how we see everyone else of the 7.7 billion people on this planet. And we're seeing that in so many ways showing up with the use of the internet and this oneness in the global economy and the global thoughts. We're seeing spirituality happening in business. We're seeing it happen in the medical field. It's all becoming one, which is all part of what these teachings were thousands of years ago. We're now living it when it's starting to happen. He says this, you are dreaming right now. You are dreaming with your brain awake. So he says we dream all the time. We dream at night with the brain asleep. We dream all day with the brain awake. Interesting concept. But what he's saying is, and we've heard this again, and especially in the Taoist and the Hindu teachings, the Buddhist teachings, that we have to understand the difference between what's going on inside of us as spiritual and what's going on outside of us in the physical. He calls it mitoti. Hindus call it Maya. We've called it illusion. All of these words are pointing to the very same thing. That what is real and what is true for us is what's happening in spirit. And then these mirrors show up, these illusions show up, this Maya shows up. And it's who our personalities or egos say we are. Not who we truly are, but it's who we have, and we're going to talk about agreements in a moment, how we have agreed that this is who we truly are. It's not true. It's an illusion. It's Maya, mitoti. Not being perfect, we reject ourselves. Wow. Because we know none of us are perfect. I say this all the time, when I'm perfect, I won't be here anymore. I'll be gone. I finished the work here. So will you. But not being perfect, we have this agreement that we have agreed upon, that if we're not perfect, we reject ourselves. We begin to criticize ourselves. We judge ourselves. Now, I know I'm not the only person at Unity Harrisburg that does that. No. We all do it. It's been part of our socialization. He uses the word domestication. That word, some of the words here I have to reframe because domestication for me is what you do to animals. I'm going to call it socialization for us. But it's the same kind of thing. He says we get into these belief systems through our agreements and we begin to reject ourselves. And then we create this persona or the mask that we wear. And we wear masks for everything we do. Why? Because we learned this is the way to get through life when we were very, very small. Right? When we first were born and we're in that loving family, if we had one, everything was good. But all of a sudden we did something that was bad. And what happened? Punishment of some sort. It may have been nothing but a raised voice. But for us, we internalized it. It's like, don't do that because this happens. And so we learned to build these masks to show up in life in ways that is acceptable to others. First our parents, and then education and religion. And that's part of this socialization piece that we internalize and build this mask. And part of what these 4 agreements is getting authentic with ourselves and going behind and releasing the mask. And these agreements will help us be able to do that. Humans punish themselves endlessly for not being what they believe they should be. Yes, we do. And you know what? I'm glad people are beginning to talk about it, because it's kind of like the family secret stuff. We'll keep it hidden and never discuss this. It's true. Why? Because we have learned, we have an agreement, if we're guilty, we must be punished. That's an agreement that we got out of our socialization, and we live that through, and that's part of what this is going to take us beyond. Then we create 2 things: the judge, the critic inside. And if you listen real carefully, it may even sound like somebody you knew in the past. But we create this judge, this critic, who says, why you should have. This is where we start to shit all over ourselves. You should have done this. That's the judge. And then what comes out of the judge is we become the victim. Neither one of these are empowering. Neither one of these are true. Neither one of these are authentic. But they're how we live, and it's the way we show up. And this whole idea that I'm not perfect and I must punish, and I judge, and the victim leads us into, I call it the monkey mind. He calls it 1,000 voices in your head. And we all have experienced that. It's the chaos. It's the trauma. We see it all around us today in society. And we see it in ourselves. Thoughts are only thoughts until we agree with them. And then they become agreements. Thoughts go by all day long. You know, they've done studies now, it's 40, 50, 60,000 thoughts a day. We don't engage with the most of them, thank God. But the ones we do, and especially the ones that meet our personal judge and victim agreements, are the ones we engage. Now, we did a lot of study in this last Tuesday class about thoughts. And we know thoughts come before emotions. We know thoughts come before words. We know thoughts come before emotions, words, and action. But here's what's interesting. I love this phrase, a train of thought. You don't have to get on the train. It can come by, you can let it go. But we only engage, we only agree, we only jump on that train of thought when we choose, no one else. And that's the power that's in this, to change the way we are, to transform our old patterns. This is not a negative thing. This is incredibly empowering and positive when we begin to understand we do not need to get on that train. Let it go by. And guess what? Another thought comes. And probably better and more empowering than the last train that came by. We have thousands of agreements with God, or whatever we call that, divine source, spirit, energy, with our families, with society, partners, and ourselves. Thousands of these agreements that we have built up over our lifetime. And not all of them are empowering. I'm just saying. And as we begin to move to the ones that are empowering, we replace those old ones. That's the excitement about all of it. But the most important are those that we make with ourselves. They color, they filter everything we do. And most of it comes out, the negative part of that comes out of the victim and the judge piece that we have going on. It takes courage and strength to break these agreements. But when we do, that personal power that we release circles back and comes back to us. I experienced this in August when I began to set intention around these agreements. Your own personal power that you gave up to others, to circumstances, to whatever, begin to come back and empower you. And as you hold your intentions, they begin to raise you up into a new place. The first new agreement, according to Don Miguel, is this one. Be impeccable with your word. Be impeccable with your word. Not only to other people, but to yourself. And when we begin to become impeccable with our words, with ourselves, we begin to become impeccable. And that's when the personal power begins to generate again. The word, this is a quote directly from him, the word is the most important tool we have as a human being. It's a force. Now, we've talked a lot in Unity about the power of the spoken word. He takes it another level. It's a force of energy. And when we begin to understand that every time we speak, internally and externally, we send forth a force into the universe. Wow, really? I just thought it was words. We were socialized that way, weren't we? Because they, whoever they were, wanted to make sure that we didn't own our own power and understand the force that we can create with. That's what this is all about. So it comes from the Latin word peccatus, which means sin. Whoa. And a sin, according to this teaching, is anything that we say against ourselves or another person. Now, in Unity, we use the definition of sin as missing the mark. This is missing the mark. When you speak untruthfully, when you speak in a negative way about someone else or yourself, in this teaching, you have created sin. What happens with sin? We punish ourselves. And that starts that cycle again. But when we go to impeccable, we wipe that out completely. Take it right out of the equation. Take it right out of our energy of our life and begin to live in a different place. Impeccable means without that, without the negativity, without the sin. When you are impeccable, you take full responsibility for your actions, but you never judge or blame yourself. You're learning lessons. How did I do it here? Is there a way I could have done it better? As we begin to look at how we show up in life and how we interact with other people and how we talk with ourselves and become more and more impeccable, there's no judgment, there's no condemnation, there's no criticism. It's like, oh, I did this, this is what happened, next time I'm going to do this. And I love this teaching because it doesn't pile the negative on top of the negative. And we've learned to do that, have we not, in our socialization process? No judgment. What will I do next time differently? Keep bringing back the intention to be impeccable with our words. Being impeccable with your word is the correct use of your personal energy. It means to use your energy in the direction of truth and love for yourself. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want truth and love for ourselves? And one of the ways to get there is staying impeccable with our words and watch the energy shift and change for us. You've heard this before from me. This really is a takeoff of Byron Katie's work. And she actually calls it the work. If you haven't studied it, it's fantastic coaching and teaching about how becoming more and more self-aware, how to move away from why questions to what questions. And one of the ways that you begin to ask, is this true? Is it good? Is it beautiful? If it is, it's probably impeccable. And as we've studied in this last whole Tuesday nights, we know before the word comes the thought. So I put thought and word together. I've expanded this to be impeccable with my thoughts and my words. But we know it starts with a thought. So here's the key question. Is it true? Is it good or beautiful? And if the answer is yes, I want to think more about that, about myself. And I want to think more about that, about you and everyone else in the world. Can you just imagine if 7.8 billion people on this planet, just for one day, would have no thought or words unless they were so impeccable that they were only true, good, or beautiful? You and I can't even fathom what would happen. That's the power in this. This is what he's talking about. It's a force and it's a power that you and I have the ability to control right here, right now, without any regard what anyone else says or thinks. To use your word to curse, judge, blame, to find guilty, or to destroy establishes hell on earth for others and you. Wow. I told you, there's a level of responsibility that goes beyond the power of spoken words here. I'm not going to use the words in this teaching that he uses, except for right now, because I want you to understand the power of what he's talking about. He calls, when you and I do this, black magic. And that we put spells on other people. We put negativity, we put dark energy, whatever you want to use. For me, that's a little bit different and better, because I only believe in one power, and that's the white light power. But he's trying to get through to us how damaging it is, not only to others, but most importantly to yourself. It's another step beyond the power of spoken word. It's understanding what power and force and energy does when you put it out. It's a boomerang. What we put out comes back. And this is another higher level of talking about the power of that. Whenever you or I hear an opinion and believe it, we make an agreement with that. And it becomes part of our belief system. How many times have you and I stood there and nodded our head in agreement with someone when they were saying something we didn't believe? That is not being impeccable with our words. Or how many times do we tell a little story just to keep our persona, our mask on, so that we still look good to everyone else? That is not being impeccable with our words and thoughts. So we have to be careful. When we're in agreement with other people, we have to learn to not agree. Maybe not to confront, but internally not to agree and say, no, that doesn't work for me. Stop the agreement before it becomes your belief system. We heard this many times. Knowing the truth will set us free. I believe this is part of that. Knowing this truth, to become impeccable with our thoughts and words, how that will begin to set us free and into the joy, into the love, and the peace that we're all looking for. Oh boy. Gossip is the very worst. Direct quote from the book. It is pure poison. Ooh. What's the definition of gossip for me? The gossip is, if I'm saying something about Kate and she's not in the room, that I would not say if Kate was there, that's gossip. And if I am impeccable with my words, I am only going to say something about Kate that I would say if she was here. That takes me out of a lot of the negativity. And the last thing you and I want to do is poison other people and ourselves. But when he takes this up to, we have been taught to gossip. We've been socialized to gossip. It's a way we interact with people, right? We've learned that bad habit, which is poison. And as we begin to set the intention to move away from it, we begin to clear up our own consciousness. And we clear up the interactions with other people. Think of gossip as a computer virus. What happens in a computer when it has a virus? It stops working. We shut down our system and theirs if we spend the time and energy in gossip. It's a computer virus. Be consistent with your new truth agreements. Be impeccable with my thoughts and words. And we will release all the negative viruses within ourselves and with all those folks we interact. They will die. Viruses die. If we don't give it more energy and keep putting more energy into it, pull it back. Stay impeccable with our thoughts and words within ourselves and all those we interact with. It will go away and it will clear it up. The whole dialogue and dynamic between us. So this week's action, I'm going to ask you to set an intention. And that intention is this: that I am impeccable with my thoughts and words. We're going to actually pull it into our meditation. I am impeccable with my thoughts and words. Find ways to repeat that. Write it down. Put it on your mirror. Put it on the refrigerator. Really set the intention this week to move to a new level of impeccability with your thoughts and words. No judgment, no criticism, no condemnation when we're learning a new lesson. What happens when you fall off the bike? When you're learning to ride the bike, you get back up on the bike, dust yourself off. That's the approach we're going to take to this for all 4 agreements. I'm impeccable with my thoughts and words. Feel that. Feel the energy. Feel when you go for a couple hours and really are. Feel your personal energy coming back. You're not giving it up. You're not putting out computer viruses. You're staying clean in the divine energy which you are. I am impeccable with my thoughts and words. Let's go to silence, please. Let's take a very deep, cleansing breath. And then through your mouth, exhale and just release. Looking up with your spiritual eyes, connecting with the divine, connecting with the light. Just let that goodness fill you up. Let it fill up your mind and your brain area to overflows down into your heart. Let your heart space expand. As we say yes to life, yes to love, peace, and joy. And then finally into your belly. Be that fountain of light. Feel it within. Experience it. Let it flow. And then whatever way works best for you, you may see it in your mind's eye. You may say it to yourself. And let's do it 3 times. Set the intention for this. I am impeccable with my thoughts and words. Breathe into that. Feel what that feels like. I am impeccable with my thoughts and words. I am impeccable with my thoughts and words. Allow that to be your number 1 agreement for this week. As you move out into your week, look for ways that you can become more impeccable with your thoughts and words. And begin to feel the energy that builds within you, the positive energy. And we just say the greatest prayer there is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Namaste. Thank you.
Yes, there is peace on earth. Let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as Creator, unite. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
In our prayer for protection, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. And wherever God is, all is well. Yay, God! Please stay safe and see you next week.